Hey everyone, welcome back to part 4 of our series on building a dynamic portfolio using React and Firebase. In the last video, we successfully set up our Redux store and logged the state in the console. Now in this video, we will implement Google Authentication using Firebase, use Redux actions and reducers to manage authentication, login and logout user while storing their data in the Redux store. So let's get started. Open Chrome browser and type Firebase console. Click on the first link. If you don't have Firebase account, then create an account and click on create a project. Give a name to your project. I will name it as portfolio demo 2. If you don't want to join developer program, then uncheck this and continue. If you don't want Gemini in Firebase, then uncheck and continue. If you don't want Google Analytics, then uncheck and continue. This will take some time to create project. Click on continue. Here, to implement Firebase in our app, we have to create an app. For that, click on this web. Give a nickname to your app. I will name it as portfolio demo 2. Click on register app. To implement Firebase in our project, we have to install Firebase and put this Firebase config object in our Firebase config.js. So copy this and we will use it later, and click on continue to console. Here you can see one app is added, which is our web app. Now scroll down and click on authentication. Click on get started. Here we can see many sign-in providers, but we want Google Authentication, so click on Google and click on enable and provide the support email, and don't make any changes to these details. Click on save. Now you can see Google is enabled. If you have followed our playlist so far, in part 2 we created a folder structure in which we added Firebase folder. So in that folder, create a file called firebase config.js. First we need to install Firebase in our application. In the terminal, type npm install Firebase. This will take some time to install. This will install Firebase in our application. If you are getting this error, then in front of it add legacy peer deps. This will properly install. Now inside Firebase config.js, first we will import all necessary Firebase modules. Here, initialize app used to initialize our Firebase app with provided configuration. GetAuth retrieves the authentication instance for handling user authentication. Google Auth provider allows user to sign in using Google. Sign in with pop-up, a function that enables Google sign-in via a pop-up window. And Get Firestore gets access to Firestore, which is a Firebase NoSQL cloud database, which we will use later. Next, we will paste the Firebase config object which we copied from Firebase SDK. Next, we will initialize Firebase app, Firebase authentication, and Firestore database. At the end, we will export everything. Here, first we initialize the Firebase app by calling initialize app. Inside that we are passing Firebase config, which we just pasted. And next we initialize Firebase authentication with get auth. Inside that we are passing app, which we just initialized. And we will also create a new Google Auth provider instance, which doesn't require any arguments. It simply sets up a Google sign-in as an authentication provider. And finally we initialize Firestore using get Firestore. Inside that we are passing app again. This connects our app to Firestore, allowing us to store and retrieve data. And at the end we will export everything which we just initialized and imported. Now inside the source folder, create a folder with the name auth. And inside the auth folder, create new file with the name authactions.js. And one more file with the name authreducer.js. Before we start writing the code inside auth actions, we need to create action types file. So inside the store, not inside auth, not inside configure, inside the store, create a new file actiontypes.js. Inside actiontypes.js, we will define our action type constants and export them. Here, login success represents the action type for successful login, and logout represents the action type for logging out. Inside auth actions, we will import all necessary dependencies and action types to implement action functions such as login user and logout user. Inside auth actions, we will import all necessary dependencies and action types to implement action functions such as login user and logout user. As you can see, we also imported sign out from Firebase configuration file, which we just defined. But if you remember, we have not imported sign out and exported it from Firebase config file. So let's go to Firebase config file and implement it. Now we have imported and exported sign out in Firebase config.js. Now let's continue with importing all necessary dependencies inside authactions.js. Here we have imported action types which we just defined inside actiontypes.js, and we have also imported sign in with pop-up, sign out, auth, db and provider from Firebase config file where we have initialized and exported. And we have also imported some Firebase functions such as doc, get doc, set doc, collection, query, where and get docs. All these functions of Firebase is used to get and set the documents inside the collection and query the collection based on some specific conditions. Before we implement action function, we need to set up Firestore in our Firebase project. So let's open Firebase. Now here, click on console, select the project. Now scroll down and select Cloud Firestore. Click on create database. Keep this as default and click on next. Click on start in test mode. Click on create. This will take some time and this will create our database. Once it's done, click on start collection and name it as admins. Click on next and name the document as admin1 and create a field email and value. Value will be the email ID which you want to be admin, and click on save. And as you can see, admin document is created and email ID is set as field inside that. And now we have to set the rules. Now this will restrict the user from accessing our collections. So clear this entire rules and put this rule which has two different rules for admins and users collection. If the user is authenticated, then this will allow the user to access the collections. Next, click on publish. Okay, we are done with setting up our database. Now let's go to our authactions.js. Next, we will create our first action function, login user. Here, first we start by defining our function. Since we are using Redux Thunk for asynchronous actions, we return an async function that takes dispatch as an argument. Inside the try block, sign in with popup is taking two arguments, auth and provider. This opens a Google sign in popup, and since Firebase authentication is asynchronous, we wait for it to complete. For that reason, await is used in front of sign in with popup, and the result is extracted and stored in user variable. Now we need to restrict access so that only admins can log in. First we create a reference to the admins collection. Here collection is taking two arguments, db and admin string, which refers to the admins collection in Firestore, and this will create a reference to the collection. Next, query is taking admin collection reference and where condition, which has some conditions written like email must match with the email ID of user who is trying to log in. This query is passed inside getDocs function. This runs the query and fetches all matching documents and stores it in admin snapshot variable. Inside if condition, if no matching document is found, the user is not an admin. We show an alert to them and log them out and exit the function. Next, we will continue writing the code. Now that we know the user is an admin, we need to check if they already exist in our Firestore database. Now collection is taking DB and users collection name. This will refer to the users collection in Firestore, and doc function is taking that collection reference and user.userid points to a specific user document using their UID, and getDoc function tries to fetch the user document from Firestore and stores it in user snap variable. We will define a variable user data. Now inside the if condition, if the user does not exist in Firestore, we create a new document with their UID, name, email, profile picture, and timestamp. And then inside the setDoc function, we will pass user reference and user data. This function will save the user info to the Firestore. Inside else condition, if the user data exists, we will simply retrieve their data. Once the user is verified and stored, we update the Redux by dispatching an action. This dispatch action will trigger the login success action in Redux and passes the user data as the payload. Finally, we will redirect the user to the home page. And inside the catch block, error is handled. If any form of error shows up during the login process, that error will be logged here. Now similarly, we will implement logout user action function. Inside logout user action function, since Firebase signout method is asynchronous, we use async and we take dispatch as an argument to update the Redux store after logging out. And inside the try block, signout is taking auth as argument. This calls Firebase to log out the current user, and await ensures that the function waits for signout to complete before moving forward. After successfully logging out, we dispatch the logout action. This tells Redux that the user session has ended and removes user data from the state. After the dispatch, we redirect the user to home page, and at the end, catch is used to catch the error, and inside catch, we are logging the error. And we are done with defining two action functions. Now it's time to implement auth reducer. Let's go to authreducer.js. Next, we will continue writing the code. We import login success and logout from action types which we defined. These constants represent that the type of action that our reducer will handle. We define an initial state, object that holds the default authentication state, and user will be set to null. This means that when the app starts, no user is logged in. Next, we create a Redux reducer named authReducer. It takes two parameters, state and action. State represents the current state, default to initial state, and action contains the type of action and the payload data. We use switch statement to check which action is being dispatched. Based on the action type, we update the state accordingly. If the action type is login success, we update the state by spreading user:action.payload stores the logged in user data in the state. The payload comes from the login user function which contains the user details. And another case will be logout. If the action type is logout, we set user to null, meaning no user is logged in. This ensures that after logout, all user data is cleared from the state. If an unknown action is dispatched, we simply return the current state. This ensures the reducer doesn't modify state if it doesn't recognize the action. And at the end, we export auth reducer so it can be used in our Redux store. Now, if you remember, in our last video, we created root reducer.js inside our configure folder. So open the root reducer.js and import the auth reducer and set auth state to auth reducer. And let's go to app.js and use these action functions. Inside app.js, if you remember in the last tutorial, we imported use selector from React Redux. Now in this, we will import use dispatch also. Use dispatch will allow us to dispatch actions like login and logout, and use selector, as you know, accesses the Redux store to get user data. And we will also import login and logout action functions from auth actions which we just defined. And also we will import app.css. Inside the app function, we store the use dispatch function to trigger actions in dispatch variable, and we will also store the user state from Redux in the user variable. Inside the return function, inside the div, first if user exists, it means someone is logged in. We show their profile picture, name and logout button. As you can see in the button, onClick function is dispatching logout user action function, and if no user data is found, in that case login with Google button is provided, and on click of that button it dispatches login user action. And for this UI, I have written a simple CSS code inside app.css. You can pause and note the CSS code. Next, let's open Chrome browser and try to log in with non-admin Google account. Here we will try to log in with non-admin account. As you can see, alert pops up as access denied, only admin can log in. And now let's try with the admin account. As you can see, the profile picture and the name shows up in the UI. So we are able to log in successfully. That's it for today, guys. Make sure to watch all the videos and add this playlist to your watch later list. Please like, share and subscribe. If you have any doubts, feel free to ask, and thanks for watching.